Communications Director for Senator Krysten Sinema. He's currently a Senior Vice President at ROKK Solutions, which is a bipartisan public affairs firm. And Jonathan Cott, also with us, former Senior Advisor to Senator Joe Manchin. John LaBombard, to you first. How significant is this?
This is significant, and thanks for having me. And I'm honored to be here alongside my longtime friend, John, the better John. This is significant, and this is a really encouraging moment for the country, I believe, and also for the Democratic Party. This thanks, I believe, to the hard work of the moderate Democrats in the Senate, Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema, is shaping up to be a real home run for domestic policy in this country. If you were to have told us 18 months ago that in a historically split 50-50 Senate and a pretty close House of Representatives that we could be on the cusp of passing legislation of this magnitude while also cutting the deficit and without raising taxes on everyday Americans, I think we would all agree this is a big home run.
John Cott, I wonder, did you think that we would get to yes, knowing Joe Manchin, knowing all the false starts and abandoned negotiations, did you actually believe in your heart that we'd get to this day?
I did, because Joe Manchin didn't walk away from the table. He kept telling people, I'm not walking away. I just want to make sure I get this right. I will tell you, after 8 years working for him, he is a guy who likes to get stuff done. He wants to cut a deal. It's who he is. It's like the governor DNA in him. And if he were gonna walk away, he would have told them, I'm done. I can't do this. I'm leaving. He said he didn't want to walk away. He kept working on it. He made the bill better. Senator Sinema made the bill better. This is now a better bill at the right time, and Democrats should be celebrating this. And I think they will once we get through the painfully long birdbath vote-a-rama process that will happen next, I think it's tomorrow night. And I'm just glad John and I won't be wandering the halls of Russell looking for a Red Bull at 3 a.m.
Birdbath vote-a-rama is like the world's worst carnival ride.
I miss wandering the halls of Russell at 3 a.m., to be honest. It's funny what you miss being on the Hill.
You might be the only one.
I am not. Admit it, deep down you are. John LaBombard, there are going to still be critics, as you know, of Senator Sinema's, right? If we look back on some of the achievements in the Biden administration, gun legislation, that obviously she was the linchpin there, leveraging her Republican contacts that wouldn't have gotten done. But here she is in this agreement, and she's pulling the carried interest loophole out of this. You're going to have progressives who are saying, why does she care so much about hedge fund managers that's the thing that she's plucking out of these negotiations?
It's a great question, and I'll tell you two things. One, John Cott and I were just having this same conversation in the green room about the fact that we have some incredible historic achievements in this Congress and under President Biden. I, of course, am a little biased in this regard, and I happen to think that a lot of this deal making and legislating is the result of moderate Senate Democrats like Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, who led on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, who led on the CHIPS Act, who led on the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That's the way legislation is supposed to work. And on tax policy, at this point, it really is no secret in Washington that Senator Sinema, while it may be out of style for some in Washington, she expresses that she wants to be quite thoughtful and deliberate to avoid any unintended consequences on tax policy. And if there are folks who are anxious that the carried interest provision was dropped from this bill in exchange for a tax on stock buybacks that's actually going to bring in more revenue to this bill and is actually going to retain the really important provisions that Senator Manchin secured on deficit reduction, we're not seeing the forest for the trees if that's the case, because this bill is shaping up to be something that's custom designed to get at what's on the minds of everyday Americans, which is rising costs and inflation.
Look, there's no question. I mean, carried interest is a relatively small part of the revenue pie. I think the question is why Senator Sinema feels so strongly about protecting it when it's only benefits, hedge fund managers, of whom her state has 94. We looked it up, but Senator Schumer's state has almost 700. Nonetheless, I think I take your point about the macro implications of this. John Cott, going to you though, given that Manchin and Schumer negotiated this with not involving Krysten Sinema up front, do you have any insights why, knowing that she opposed the carried interest loophole, they included it in the deal? and didn't include her in the negotiations at first.
It's not that they didn't include her in the negotiations. I think Senator Manchin said this bill was largely negotiated with a bunch of moderate senators early last year. They basically just took the framework. Senator Manchin had some changes he wanted to make to the energy side. He wants to make sure we're producing more in the US. He had his concerns. He took them to Senator Schumer. Senator Schumer got him to yes. Then he took them to Senator Sinema. She had her concerns. And this is actually how the process works. I think people were giving them a lot of grief for it, but I don't know why we're upset that a senator sat down and read through 725 pages, looked at the areas that they wanted to improve on, made the changes, got some compromise, and then we all got to yes. We have a big tent party. Look, Monday night when they have their leadership meetings, you have Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Joe Manchin and Mark Warner. That's a big tent. You had Krysten Sinema in there. This is how we get things done in Washington. Everybody has to compromise a little bit. And I think this bill was made better by both of our old bosses.
And if I just might add to that, I couldn't agree with John more on that point. The Democrats have often prided ourselves on being a Big Ten party. Senator Manchin represents a state that's very different than Senator Sinema. And it's okay that there are Democrats who feel differently about different policies. It's kind of crazy that we have to say that these days, but having different views and different perspectives on different policies, that's kind of the way this is supposed to work, where people come together and find the areas of consensus, even if they have different views on different pieces of this legislation.
Common ground.
John LaBombard, John Cott, thank you to both of you for
Thanks,
being with
guys.
us this morning. Big day.